Brought to you by PrayLatin.com, makers of prayer cards featuring complete English phonetic renderings of Latin pronunciations.
We've seen a focus of many fringe bishops and cardinals to push the Holy Father to continue pushing the Church to change her teachings onto that sin that Father James Martin, FJ, has an unholy focus on, as well as on who can be ordained. A lot of forces want the Church to change the teachings on who can be ordained, the limits or restrictions on the sacrament of holy orders. But those are not actually the most absurd things that we've seen people focus on in the coming days, because women's ordination, the James Martin sin, sins of the flesh in general are unfortunately deviations from orthodoxy on that are nothing new, unfortunately, for Catholics. Some people now are focused on the Holy Father's ethnicity, which is weird because a lot of us don't really care what the race of the Holy Father is, as long as he's the best man for the job, right? We don't care. Just give us a holy man, someone who loves Jesus Christ, wants to spread that love to others, and loves souls enough to prevent them from violating the commandments that God gave down to us. See, the Holy Father is Creole. If you're not American, let me give you a quick version of this. He's from Louisiana, and has ethnic roots in all the major groups who have been in Louisiana for centuries, and this includes the descendants of Africans. There are two ways to approach thinking about this. There's also French and a few other groups. You can, one, take it to be an interesting story that can be symbolically positive for some groups, or you can go over the top and take it too far. There's a case study on two different approaches, and I can't believe I'm about to cite these guys positively, but it does happen on occasion. Headline from the National Catholic Reporter of all organizations: Pope Leo XIV's Creole heritage highlights complex history of being hateful based on the content of one's genetics and the Church in America. That word here on YouTube is no bueno. Found that one out the hard way. I understand some people finding it interesting, taking it to be a positive thing. They can see a little of themselves in there. Okay, fine. There's way too much emphasis on that these days in the world, I think, personally. But I get it. But there's a way to take that too far. And let's do a compare and contrast here. In the article, quote, "The new Pope's French-sounding last name, Prevost, intrigued Jari Honora, a New Orleans genealogist who began digging in the archives and discovered the Pope had deep roots in the Big Easy. For those not in the U.S., the Big Easy is New Orleans. All four of Pope Leo XIV's maternal great-grandparents were, quote, free people of color in Louisiana, based on 19th century census records Honora found. As part of the melting pot of French, Spanish, African, and Native American cultures in Louisiana, the Pope's maternal ancestors would be considered a Creole. It was special for me because I share that heritage, and so do many of my friends who are Catholic here in New Orleans," said Honora, a historian at the Historic New Orleans Collection, a museum in the French Quarter. Honora and others in the Black and Creole Catholic communities say the election of Leo, a Chicago native who spent over 2 decades in Peru, including 8 years as a bishop, is just what the Catholic Church needs to unify the worldwide church and elevate the profile of Black Catholics whose history and contributions have long been overlooked. As an aside, I do get that to a degree, because when there's this perception that in the US and Europe that Catholicism is a religion for European descended people, which is weird when you look at the demographics of where the church is growing or has been solid, relatively speaking, in the last few centuries. South America, Africa, and Asia, none of which really fit it's a European's religion mentality. But when you listen to people who are hostile to the church talk about it and are trying to win people away from Catholicism, that is often one way they frame it. So this is at least a good counter-narrative for that, because their claim is absurd. Leo, who has not spoken publicly about his roots, may also have an ancestral connection to Haiti. His grandfather, Joseph Norval Martinez, may have been born there, though historical records are conflicting, Honora said. However, Martinez's parents, the Pope's great-grandparents, were living in Louisiana since at least the 1850s, he said. Andrew Jolivet, a professor of sociology and Afro-Indigenous studies at the University of California, Santa Barbara, did his own digging and found the Pope's ancestry reflected the unique cultural tapestry of southern Louisiana. The Pope's Creole roots draw attention to the complex, nuanced identities Creoles hold, he said. There is Cuban ancestry on his maternal side. So there are a number of firsts here, and it's a matter of pride for Creoles, said Jolivet, whose family is Creole from Louisiana. So I also view him as a Latino pope because the influence of Latino heritage cannot be ignored in the conversation about Creoles. Most Creoles are Catholic, and historically it was their faith that kept families together as they migrated to larger cities like Chicago, he said. The former Cardinal Robert Prevost's maternal grandparents, identified as essentially having mixed background in historic records, married in New Orleans in 1887 and lived in the city's historically Creole 7th Ward. In the coming years, the laws from the South that kept people apart rolled back post-Civil War reforms, and just about every aspect of their lives was circumscribed by their content or their ethnicity, he said. And it goes on, frames it in the American story of that. It's a topic I've never found all that interesting, but maybe that's just because I'm part of the majority. I don't know. I find it a weird way of talking about Catholics, though, for Catholics to be that focused on it, aside from maybe it being of interest and for some very personal reasons. And as annoying as that kind of framing can be for many of us, that's nothing. This one takes the cake. Headline from Fox News. Sonny Hostin changes tune on Pope Leo XIV after learning of Haitian roots, declares we have a black pope. The View co-host was previously concerned over the American pontiff's past statements on the James Martin lifestyle. We go back to what Cardinal Hollerich and others are saying about how he's going to keep the blessings of the James Martin sin going. His past statements on that sin are very, very Catholic sounding. So this is why we don't know what he's going to do on it. And no, don't worry. I'm not going to play a clip from The View for you. People got really mad when I did that before. But as a general thing, they're focusing here on what I consider to be the most superficial thing you could possibly do, because we're concerned about the salvation of souls. And yes, we are concerned about just social arrangements and that, because those things can be an obstacle to the salvation of souls and violate human dignity, right? Basic Catholic social teaching stuff. Sonny Hostin is a character, and like many of them, are completely obsessed with the wrong things when it comes to Christianity. From the article, quote, The View co-host Sonny Hostin revealed Monday she now loves Pope Leo XIV after discovering his black background. Hostin has previously expressed concerns about the new pontiff on Friday after his comments referencing the James Martin lifestyle resurfaced. On Monday, she spoke more optimistically about Pope Leo after learning his maternal grandparents were described as people of color on documents with his grandfather's original birthplace listed as Haiti. There's one thing that is a very interesting thing is very interesting to me because President Trump, as you remember, called Haiti a certain type of country, Hostin said. As it turns out, our new American pope has Haitian and black roots. So we actually have a black pope, apparently. It's a chef's kiss for me. How many of you surprised she brought the American president into this discussion? I haven't even mentioned him really once other than in passing as a topic for a future thing on about the Pope. But she goes right there because politics is their religion. After Pope Leo was announced on Thursday, Hostin said she was concerned about the James Martin community based on a statement he made in 2012 as a bishop, where he described how pop culture had fostered sympathy for beliefs and practices that are at odds with the gospel, including that James Martin lifestyle and alternative families comprised of very deluded people and who are allowed to adopt kids for some reason. The article doesn't quite say that. That's my characterization. Hostin on Monday said she was more encouraged by Pope Leo based on comments from 2023, when she thought showed he had completely changed his position. He said, he believes what Pope Francis believed is that a church is a church for everyone. The church is very inclusive. So I'm liking this guy a lot. I'm loving the Pope, Hostin said. I'm going to pause here. If you're wondering why there's a dichotomy between his statement in 2012 and 2023, it's because a lot of cardinals will not countersignal the Holy Father under any circumstances. He'd have to be out there basically engaging in the sacrifice to Moloch in St. Peter's Square himself for them to come out and contradict anything the Holy Father says. It's one of the reasons why Cardinal Sarah never had a chance. It's one of the reasons why Cardinal Burke, his name was never brought up in the real conversation for who could become the Holy Father, because they challenged Pope Francis. And cardinals typically really hate that. And it could just be that he was aligning his self with Pope Francis, at least verbally. because that's generally what they did, what the Cardinals do. And she loves him for it. She may end up becoming disappointed. Her co-hosts Anna Navarro and Whoopi Goldberg also praised Pope Leo after he gave a speech earlier that morning voicing support for imprisoned journalists. He stands in solidarity with journalists who are imprisoned for reporting the truth and urged them to avoid ideological or partisan language. I like that. I'm digging him, Goldberg said. I love that one of his first acts was to meet with journalists and defend the right of journalists to be journalists and uncover the truth, Navarro added. And I think it's so timely that we have an American Pope because we are going through things in this country. And it's good to show the world that not all American leaders are the same. It's good to have an American that can denounce the things happening against immigrants here, end quote. I laugh because it goes back to politics, because it always goes back to politics for them. Always. Journalists in the U.S. are fine. Okay, they're not. Okay, the president says mean things about journalists here. Cry me a river, you'll get over it. And the Holy Father's right. Journalists should not go to jail for being journalists. That's not controversial in the Western world. In other parts of the world, that is very controversial. Go to Venezuela. Take a look what's going on down there. Or on the other side of the former Iron Curtain. Go look what's happened there. And you'll see that people who are just trying to report the truth, who are actually doing the job of a journalist, which is a very useful job in a even vaguely democratic world, face real consequences for trying to do their job. So yeah, no, he's not wrong for doing that. But they bring it back to America because they're propagandists. And as propagandists, they're trying to twist the Holy Father into their own image, and they're using the entry point of one of the most inconsequential things of all of them, the content of his genetics. Why do they care that much? I've encountered very few Catholics who care that much. Some of the most right-wing, if you want to call them that, Catholics I know were wanting Cardinal Sarah to be their pope. Okay, so again, I don't know what they're driving at here. They wouldn't have liked Cardinal Sarah anyway, because he had some pretty spicy things to say about the subject of migration. As GMJ says, politics is their religion. It is. I get the feeling Georgie likes my use of the word inclusive when I go inclusive. Well, and there's a difference between a church that is inclusive and then inclusion being your byword, your part of your gospel. Because you're using inclusion in the word in the sense of the secular world, which is what they were doing there. Catholicism is a universal religion. It is open to every single human being on the planet because Jesus came and gave himself up on the cross to open up the doors of heaven to anybody, any human being who would cooperate with his grace and chose to walk the path that Jesus tells us to walk. To be in union with his bishops, to listen to what they teach, and to cooperate with the grace, and to stop sinning, and to believe. And yeah, it's a little more complicated than that, obviously. But that's kind of when you boil it down. It has nothing to do with what your skin looks like. It really doesn't. And it's open for everybody. Many don't know this. I'm a big fan of Archbishop Lefebvre. Don't think he did anything wrong. His excommunication was clearly invalid. He will be raised to the altars one day as a saint. But he became famous in the church for leading the Holy Ghost Fathers in Africa to bring souls into the church. And yeah, he used the traditional mass to do it because it was like in the 30s and 40s when he was doing it. Maybe even earlier. He helped Pope Pius XII write a document about the church in Africa, about missionary societies in general. The church has never been that concerned about the appearance of your flesh. Instead, the church has been more concerned about the state of your soul. It would be wonderful if we get back to that. I am very curious what you may have to say about this. Let me know in the comments. Are you that surprised about this turn towards ethnicity? Let me know. I'm curious. Hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't. It absolutely helps. So to sharing this on social media, that helps too. If you ever thought about supporting the work we do here at Return to Tradition, that would be greatly helpful. It is, there's Patreon and Subscribe Store and all those things in the description box below, all of which have been asked for by viewers of this channel, as well as that join button below for just want to go through YouTube if you want to keep it simple. Pray for the church. Pray for everybody we spoke about today. I'm not trying to rally you up against some of these cardinals. Pray for them instead, that they receive the clarity of mind that the gospel of Christ will give them. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.